It's my pleasure and great honor to introduce the Commissioner of Major League Baseball, Rob Manfred. He's visiting Japan on the occasion of the first and second rounds of the Fourth World Baseball Classic, held at the Tokyo Dome starting tonight until the 11th, and the second round is March 12th to 16th. Mr. Manfred was elected as the 10th commissioner in the history of Major League Baseball in August 2014 by a vote of all owners of 30 Major League clubs. And he officially assumed his post in January 2015. The next year, he presided over a new 5-year collective bargaining agreement continuing the sport's unprecedented era of labor peace through 2021. The sport is now in its midst of at least a quarter-century period without a strike or a lockout. 2016 was also a record year for industry revenues and overall business performance. Gross revenue approached the $10 billion mark. That makes it the second most profitable sports league in the world, just behind the National Football League. Commissioner Manfred is a graduate of Cornell University and Harvard Law School, and he's been working with Major League Baseball since 1987. Welcome, Commissioner.
Thank you, Bob. Well, let me start by saying what a pleasure it is to be back in Japan. During my time with baseball, I've been very fortunate to have a chance to come to Japan on a number of occasions for all-star tours, opening series of regular season games, but this is my first WBC visit. Prior to being commissioner, I usually worked a venue myself as a venue manager, and never had the opportunity to work here in Tokyo. So I'm really pleased to be here. With respect to the WBC, just let me say quickly, we believe this event is the premier international baseball event and will continue to grow in popularity over the years. It is a great event because it allows the greatest baseball players in the world to compete against each other, and it allows them to have that competition with the extra honor of representing their country. And that combination of great players and the opportunity to represent one's country is something that makes for great sport. So we're really excited to be here in Tokyo. I saw the first game of the WBC last night in Korea, and I will see a game in Miami yet this week. So it's going to be a whirlwind tour, but a great one if you're a baseball fan.
We have a simultaneous interpreter here. Doji Tsuyaku. Okay. その後で日本語で質問聞きたいと遠慮なくしてください。I'm going to ask a few questions to the commissioner and then turn it over to the floor. And again, you're free to ask anything you want. But he said he's not going to answer everything that's asked. I read that you met with Donald Trump before his inauguration. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, I had an opportunity to shake hands with President Trump over the years in New York, but never had really spent any time with him. And I received an overture about coming over to visit with him before he was inaugurated. I spent about 45 minutes with him. It was a really interesting conversation. And I think the most important takeaway from my perspective is he's a huge baseball fan. He was a great friend of George Steinbrenner's, spent a lot of time at Yankee Stadium, and as I'm sure most of you know, there's always been sort of a unique relationship between the President of the United States and baseball, the whole throwing out the first pitch and all these great traditions that we have in the game. And it was, I think, good for our sport to learn that the new president is, in fact, a big fan.
Yankee fan?
Yeah, I think he would characterize himself as a Yankee fan. He characterized himself, I think, as George Steinbrenner's good luck charm. That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Do you have any advice for you as commissioner?
No, we didn't. He didn't really offer advice. We talked about the game. We talked about sports generally. Extremely knowledgeable about the game. And we had a great conversation.
Do you think his presidency will have any impact on Major League Baseball at all?
Well, I think that every president has some impact on a business like ours. To date, we have not seen, people keep asking me about this, to date we have not seen anything from the Trump administration that has had a material impact on our operations, which is interesting given, the diversity of our workforce, how many players come from outside the United States, but we really have not seen any changes to date.
So his immigration policy won't have any effect on, say, Japanese players and their families coming to?
We got our visas this year in exactly the same way that we have for many years, and we believe going forward that we're going to be able to continue to do business the way that we have in the past, and we've seen nothing from the administration that would suggest to the contrary.
What about the wall with Mexico and Latin imports?
Again, our principal concern with respect to Latin America, Mexico in particular, is the ability of players to come and go in order to play Major League Baseball, and we have not seen any changes that have materially impacted that so far in 2017.
Is he going to throw out the first pitch at Yankee Stadium?
That's an announcement that I think is appropriate for the club and President Trump to make.
Okay, changing the subject to the World Baseball Classic, which is the reason you're here now. Could you tell us briefly how the WBC has grown from the year 2006 and what you expect from this tournament? Well,
the tournament barely resembles what happened in 2006. In terms of the numbers of countries participating, we've added 4 qualifying rounds to give additional countries the opportunity to be part of the event, to play their way into the 16-team field. This year, the WBC will be broadcast in 182 countries. This will be a $100 million event over this relatively brief, less than 2-week period. And from day one, while it was a profitable event from the beginning, it has really grown in terms of its revenue significance and its popularity around the world.
Is there anything that makes this particular tournament different from the others?
Well, I think that this year there was a particular focus on making sure that the rosters of all of the participating countries were as strong as possible. We worked very hard at that. I think the U.S. squad in particular has a complement of players that's stronger than what we have seen in the past. And obviously, that adds to the appeal of the event. The more we have the best players in the world, the more popular the event's going to be.
There was a report that came out in the American and Japanese media that the MLB was going to give up on the WBC. It got a lot of attention here, and I know that Major League Baseball has denied it. But do you have any idea what the origin of that report was?
I really don't know where that report came from. MPB has been a great partner in the event. I had a chance to chat with the Japanese commissioner earlier today. In that conversation, I characterized the role of NPB and some of our partners here in Japan as being the backbone of the WBC. I know that he is as committed to the event as I am, so it surprised me that that report that was incorrect surfaced here. As a matter of fact, I think that in many ways, the WBC's popularity in Japan may be the highest of any single country.
So they generate the most revenue, would you say?
Yeah, they generate of any country, there would be more revenue generated in Japan than any other country for the WBC.
I remember one game I was here, 60 million people watched it. It was a WBC final.
Yeah, we've had some phenomenal numbers in terms of the viewership in particular countries. In Puerto Rico, in 2013, I think 80-something% of the televisions in the country were tuned into the game, and that's testament to what I mentioned in my opening remarks: the combination of the greatest players in the world. And, playing for your country is a powerful, powerful engine for sport.
In the 3 World Baseball Classic tournaments so far, Japan's won twice and the Dominican Republic has won it once, but the United States, the country that invented baseball, has yet to medal, never reached the finals, and has not even won a medal.
Do we need to continue to review these results, or I am aware of the results.
I know. Is that just because there's a different attitude towards baseball in March in the United States than there is in Japan and Korea? That's for sure.
Yeah, I think that there's a number of things that have contributed to the results that we've seen so far. I think the Latin American countries, the Dominican Republic in particular, have a culture of playing the game year-round. Most American players take the winters off, and so players are in a different condition in terms of their physical condition when they play the event. I think Japan has been particularly effective in terms of their training periods coming into the event to make up for the fact that ordinarily they might not play year-round, and I think that has contributed to some of the results that we've seen. I hope we're going to have a very, very competitive American team this time around. Joe Torre and Jim Leland, the managers, worked very hard to put together a good squad, and we're anxious to get going and see how it turns out this time.
Now, there's a lot of big stars this time on the roster.
It's a good roster.
Do you know who Shohei Ohtani is?
I do. I would be a pretty bad commissioner of baseball if I didn't know. But yes, I do.
Well, they say he'll be posted possibly at the end of this year. Do you have any idea what kind of contract he would get?
Well, I think that depends in large part on when he's posted. The system for the movement of players from Japan and the United States is a complicated system. It is a system, I think, that has served both MPB and Major League Baseball well, in the sense that some of the greatest players from Japan have come and played Major League Baseball, have driven interest in baseball in the United States and here in Japan. By the same token, the relatively limited number of the players that has moved has allowed baseball to thrive here domestically. I think that's really important for the sport. So these complicated rules are important. If he moves on the time frame, is posted on the time frame that you posit, he would move as subject to the entry-level signing restrictions that apply to international amateur players, and that would affect significantly the amount of dollars he could get in the contract.
Would that affect just his bonus or the salary?
His salary, the overall earnings, yeah.
Well, Darvish and Matsuzaka, when they were posted, they got posting fees of over $50 million. And
remember those posting fees, right, went to the
teams, right, not to the individual.
Right,
but now it's been lowered to $20 million. And are there other changes in the offing, or do you?
Yeah, there are a significant set of changes that were negotiated as part of the basic agreement that we reached in December. Probably the most important of those changes is that a player from another country, in order to sign a contract free from the limitations that are placed on initial amateur contracts, has to be 26 years old and have played 6 years of professional baseball. That would mean for Mr. Otani, in order to avoid those restrictions, he would have to wait, I believe it's November of 19, the off-season that begins in November of 2019.
Wow. Just a couple more questions, and I'll turn it over. Back in the 60s and 70s, when I was here as a student, there was constant talk about a real World Series between the champions of American and Japanese baseball. The Yomiuri Giants are really pushing that hard. But now nobody seems to talk about that anymore. Do you think that idea is dead, or is just impractical? Or?
Well, I think from the perspective of Major League Baseball, there is a real World Series. It's the one that we play in October with what we regard to be the best players in the world. We're all in favor of international competition. That's what the WBC is all about. But the World Series is the World Series.
Is the real World Series?
Yes. I'll take that amendment. Okay.
Will there ever be a Major League division in Asia, or a Major League franchise in Tokyo or Seoul or Taiwan?
I think that's dependent upon developments with respect to transportation that are sort of beyond my grasp or beyond my ability to imagine. We're an everyday game. 162 times in 183 days we go out there and do it. In order, given current modes of transportation, in order to do that, there are inherent geographical limitations. Until transportation evolves to the point that it's a lot quicker than 14 hours to get here from New York, I think that the better focus is for Major League Baseball to continue to grow, and for us to work with NPB, KBO, and the countries here in Asia to make sure that baseball grows and remains strong.
Okay, now last question. Many people aren't aware of this, but when Rob went to work for the major leagues back in the late 80s and early 90s, the gross revenue of Major League Baseball was roughly $1.5 billion. And that was almost the same as the gross revenue for Nippon Professional Baseball. Now, it's approaching 10 billion, on its way to 15, I guess. And but Japanese baseball has stayed the same for a variety of reasons: taxpayer-funded stadiums and media and merchandise practices. They just pursued baseball as a business more efficiently in the United States. But is there a limit to the growth of Major League Baseball? Are you going to expand, or what's in the future?
Well, I think baseball is a growth business. I do think that there will come a point in time where Major League Baseball will look to expand. There's a certain symmetry to 32 teams that would be very beneficial to baseball with respect to scheduling and postseason formats. It would open up a number of revenue growth opportunities. I'm bullish on our business. I think over the period of time that you were talking about, baseball was transformed. I think really by three factors. New stadium construction completely changed the economics of the game, not just in terms of the number of people that we attract. And remember, in the United States, we routinely draw 74, 75 million people every year to Major League Baseball, and we sell another 40 or 41 million tickets in minor league baseball. So it's a tremendously popular in-person activity. And the stadiums that were built created economic opportunities, not just around ticketing, but with respect to things like concessions and merchandising and sponsorship that really were phenomenal. I think that people will continue to innovate in the stadium area, and it will continue to fuel growth in baseball. The latest trend, I think, is exemplified by the Braves' new stadium in Atlanta that is a massive real estate development around it. It's office buildings, it's housing, it's restaurants. Just an amazing undertaking by a baseball club. The second one is, the growth of the regional sports networks in the United States. While who knows what's going to happen with respect to the media landscape, I think the one thing that is certain, and the reason that baseball did so well with the regional sports networks, is content's king. And we got 2,430 games out there, and people want to watch them. And so I think that will continue to drive our growth going forward. And then the last piece is technology. We were at the forefront of the movement onto the digital platform. Excuse me. We have a very exciting partnership with Disney with respect to alternative methods of distributing sports content, and I think those three things will allow baseball to continue to grow from a revenue perspective.
Okay, thanks a lot. I'll open up to questions now. Would anybody like to ask the commissioner something? Yes, Yuriko, go ahead. Identify yourself.
My name is Yuriko Romer, and I'm a director-producer of a documentary film about U.S.-Japan relations in baseball called Diamond Films. Sports has traditionally been a vehicle for
What are they waving at? Oh my God, I thought I was doing something wrong. There's a lot going on back there.
Sorry, I should have told her.
Sorry. Sports has traditionally been a vehicle for international friendship and, of course, the Olympics. But I would love to hear your perspectives on baseball and its role especially in this global world that we live in now.
Well, let me say two things about that. I think that our trip to Cuba last year with the Tampa club to play the Cuban national team in conjunction with President Obama's historic visit to Cuba is an example of the kind of role that baseball and sports generally can play in terms of improving relations between two countries. If there was probably the single greatest fact in common between the United States and Cuba was the fact that baseball was ingrained in the culture of both of those countries, and it provided a common ground, a context within which more important substantive conversations could take place. I think the second point I would make is this. I think our game, excuse me, as it presently exists, is a great example of the power of internationalization, diversity in a workforce. We have 28% of our players come from outside the United States. We put, there's all sorts of different cultures that are melded together into the rosters on our 30 teams. And, we play what may be the quintessential team game. And I think it is an example of how with understanding and tolerance. People from different backgrounds can come together, work together, and be effective.
Dan?
Mr. Commissioner, having seen the 3 previous World Baseball Classics, they've been terribly entertaining, as Bob was noting, terribly popular here in Japan. And I suppose if we look to the future, if there's an end goal, it's how you make the World Baseball Classic towards the relevance and the importance to the players that, if you want to say, the World Cup soccer has. Right. And there's got to be some hurdles that exist: timing, getting the buy-in of owners, insurance companies, and everyone who's going to have to sign off on such an event. How do you get to that level based on where we are now?
I think if you look at international competitions, there's a tendency to look at them as they exist today. After baseball, probably the sport that I pay the most attention to is golf. And we think about the Ryder Cup and the amazing popularity, interest that it drives today. But that took time. And I think that the events that changed the Ryder Cup and made it what it is today were competitive events, things that happened on the golf course. I think the same thing is going to be true for the WBC. I think the reason it has grown the way that it has can be traced to certain things that happened in the early WBCs. I think, for example, the Japan-Korea final in Dodger Stadium, even for those of us who get to go to lots and lots of different kind of baseball games, that was a memorable night. And there's going to be more of those seminal events that, on a cumulative basis, turn the WBC into what it can be, the kind of great international competition that it can be. Now, there are challenges. The principal one is the calendar. And it is something that we need to continue to think about, work on, to make sure that challenge doesn't become a roadblock to the event becoming everything that it should be.
Sorry, if I just
Sure.
ask a follow-up. So, again, there seem certain owners that are more amenable to having their players participate, and I don't want you to have to speak for everybody, but how do you get them to say, look, we're comfortable with this 2-week grace period of playing for your country and being proud of it?
Yeah, let me correct the premise just a little bit. I think that I know we have tremendous ownership support for this event. And by that I mean literally 30-0 support. Where we have a problem is, our people, the general managers, get paid to do one thing, right? They get paid, they see their job as putting the most competitive Major League Baseball team that they can out on the field. It's at that level that we occasionally have seen some resistance. And I think that you overcome that resistance with 2 things. One, an educational process, making sure that people understand how important this event is to the growth and development of the game internationally. And then you hope that you get those seminal competitive events that I referred to before. And those events have a way of creating a tidal wave that brings even the doubters along with the process.
Yes, Jason, go ahead, stand up.
Jason Koskuri, Japan Times, Mr. Commissioner. With regards to international baseball, with the Tokyo Olympics coming up, I know a few days ago, or maybe last week, the head of the Players Union was saying that it would be difficult for Major League players to participate, and you yourself have said the dates weren't ideal earlier, maybe sometime last summer. I was just wondering if you can expound upon, have there been any more discussions about Major League participation in the Olympics and what your thoughts on the matter are?
Well, there have not been any substantive discussions with the Baseball and Softball Confederation about participation of Major League players in the 2020 Olympics. I'm sure that those conversations will take place. We have not even been informed, for example, of what exactly the format of the event's going to be, how many days would be involved, and whatnot. I think even in the absence of that information, the skepticism that you've heard from some relates to, no matter how you put the event together, there would be a significant number of Major League players who'd be away from their teams. It would alter the competition in what I've already characterized today as our everyday game. I do not believe that our owners would support some sort of a break in our season. Continuity is really important to our competition. Having said all that, I am more than prepared to hear what the event's going to look like and describe to our owners what our options are with respect to participation in that type of event, and we'll make a decision from there.
Anybody? 日本語で言ってもいいですけど。
読売新聞の太田と申します。オリンピックのことで少しフォローさせてください。今年の夏に2024年東京の次の夏のオリンピックの会場が決まると思います。今のところパリ、LA 立候補していると思いますけれども、もしロサンゼルスが会場に決定した場合、今後 MLB の選手が参加するというふうな機運、そういったものは出てくる可能性がありますが、また皆さんの中で、まだフォーマットは分からないとしても、東京にしてもですね、25人のアクティブがダメなら40人で考えるとか、そういった具体的なディスカッションというのは、なさったことはありますか。
Well, we have allowed players on 40-man rosters, not on 25s, to participate in the Olympics previously, and that's the kind of flexibility that I'm more than willing to explore, depending on the timing and content of the event in 2020 and the hypothetical event that you posit with respect to 2024. I don't see a fundamental difference other than, maybe a travel day or two between an Olympic Games in Tokyo and one in Los Angeles. The essential hurdles for participation in an event like that are the same. Having said that, we have in the past, and I'm sure we will explore going forward, flexibility, and I think that we certainly have demonstrated in the past that we have additional flexibility with respect to non-40-man roster, or excuse me, non-25-man roster players.
Dan?
Mr. Commissioner, not related to World Baseball Classic, but recently you've been in the news because of rules to advance the speed of play in Major League Baseball. One thing that's out there that I think hopefully you can put clarity on whether it's an option. Here in Japan, games can actually end in ties. And if I understand what's been discussed in the United States, it's the potential of extra inning games actually ending in ties. So despite all the nice things I said about soccer, my own feeling is the worst thing that possible would be baseball ending in ties. Do you have a feeling, or could you expound about this?
We have never suggested the possibility of a major league game ending in a tie. This may be the most misunderstood suggestion that has been out there. Each winter, we have a conversation with our internally and then with our Players Association and the minor leagues about potential rule changes. So, some of those changes, probably most of them, are intended to apply throughout baseball, major league level and all the way down. Occasionally, we have special purpose rules. One special purpose rule that we suggested this year was that in extra innings, I believe it's the 11th inning, each team would begin with a runner on second base. It's kind of rule that's been used in international play in the past. We never had any intention of bringing that rule to Major League Baseball. We adopted it and wanted to use it in the rookie leagues, which are essentially developmental leagues. Very few fans actually go to those games. Their purpose is not economic, they're really developmental leagues, and there's no developmental reason to play an 18-inning game in 110-degree heat in Arizona in the summertime and have a shortstop pitching out of position in order to play the game to conclusion. Unfortunately, some people, I would say people that probably too bound up in tradition and opposed to change, have chosen to characterize this as something that we suggested was going to be used at the major league level, and that simply was never the case.
Yes, you, over there.
I'm Takeshi Hara, a member of this club. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. I understand a huge revenue you've mentioned comes from ballparks per se, but also from the entertainment facilities adjacent to ballparks. I'm wondering, roughly speaking, what's the ratio between them? Thank you.
Well, that's a very difficult question because most clubs have separate companies that run those adjacent entertainment facilities, so they report on their baseball operations to us, but those related entities, we don't get full financial disclosure on those, so I just can't give you a good answer to that question. But those developmental opportunities are certainly significant and probably, depending on the scope of the development, may be bigger than the baseball revenues.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner. My name is Hiroki Tora. I represent Asahi Shimbun in Japan, and you mentioned about the posting system, and I was just wondering that if that structure will be changed this year, or there will be any negotiations or discussions going forward. And the second question is, maybe in the future, not in 5 or 10 years, but what do you think about the posting system will become?
Well, let me start with the big picture first. I think the posting system has served the two leagues, NBP and MPB, let me see if I can get it out correctly, and Major League Baseball well. I think that a system of this type is necessary in order to compensate Japanese teams who may be losing players of high value who still have reserve years left on their obligation to their club. So I think that there will be a system like this. It will be periodically modified, as it has been in the past. I think one thing that we would love to do, just in terms of equality of treatment, simplicity, there are differences, small but not insignificant, between the posting system with KBO and NPB, and then the system under which the Cubans move. I think it would be a really good thing for the sport if we had a posting system that sort of applied throughout baseball so that those little differences would not persist. But I think the fundamentals are that there will be some sort of a system to compensate a professional club in another country that is invested in and developed a player and is decided, usually in response to the player's wishes, to release that player to play in Major League Baseball. But, by the way, let me say one last thing about that. I actually think that the balance that's been struck as a result of the posting system in place is a very positive thing, because it's allowed for the internationalization of Major League Baseball while not interfering and, in fact, allowing the growth of the domestic product here in Japan.
Will there be any discussions this year about changing money or structure?
I suspect that there will be discussions this year. Yeah.
Do you think the 20 million will go up or down?
I think the method of determining the posting fee probably will change. Remember, I mean, let's talk about the 20 million. I mean, you alluded to this before, and I sort of had a thought and I lost it in the course of talking about it. Remember, I think the economic theory is this, that a player has a certain value to Major League Baseball, right? And the posting system is the mechanism by which you determine how much of that value is going to the player and how much of that value is going to the club that developed the player. And I think that there always will be the desire on the part of one party or another to revisit exactly how that division should take place.
Okay, questions? Anybody? Jason? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
My name is Tawa, associate member. I'm talking from amateur side of baseball. As you know, in Japan, youngsters learn sports in school, unlike other countries. Mm-hmm. These days, there are many teachers who have never played baseball, and we know the population of Japan are declining, but I saw a statistics that the decline in youngsters who don't play baseball is sharper than those of the total populations. Mm-hmm. Have you any advice to combat this situation?
Well, probably the most significant initiative that we have undertaken since I became commissioner is the initiative that we refer to as Play Ball, which is our effort to engage more fully with all aspects of amateur baseball in the United States in order to encourage youth participation. We have some great partners in the youth space, Little League Baseball being maybe first and foremost among those partners, but we have tried to build relationships with all aspects of amateur baseball. The second thing we've done is we have invested in underserved communities, urban areas where there are not fields and facilities available for kids to play our game and try to make those facilities available. We have a $30 million fund with the Major League Baseball Players Association that makes investments in these sorts of areas. And we've worked with a number of amateur groups, including the Positive Coaching Alliance, to make sure that we have coaches out there who know how to teach the game to kids. Keeping kids interested in the game is not an easy thing. You have to know how to teach and coach our games, and we've worked very hard in that area. I'm not suggesting that everything we've done in the United States is something that should be done here, because I don't know enough about the youth market here. What I will suggest to you is this: our strategies that were tailored to the issues, similar issues that we were seeing in the United States, have been successful in a much more abbreviated time frame than we suggested. Our participation numbers have actually upticked the last couple of years, and we take that as a huge positive for the sport.
You had a question?
Commissioner, just to briefly go back to the subject of Shohei Ohtani. After the CBA came out and the international pools were released, there was a lot of talk about, Ohtani not being able to go to the well, he can go, but under the restrictions. And was there ever any pushback from the clubs about some sort of exemption for or grandfather clause for Ohtani or players in his situation? And why wouldn't, or what was the reasoning behind Major League Baseball deciding on the age limit that it decided on for the international pools in the new CBA?
Yeah, well, let's do the last one first, and then I'll talk about exceptions. The idea of the 26-6 was that rule, okay, essentially allows a foreign player to come to Major League Baseball as a free agent. Okay, so in other words, once the posting fee is set and clubs are prepared to pay the posting fee, that player is a free agent. He can negotiate with whoever's willing to pay that posting fee. All right, 26-6 is an approximation. 6 is exactly, but 26 is an approximation of the age and service time at which an American player becomes a free agent. There's a certain equity associated with that rule. The old rule at 23 was making foreign players, giving them access to free agency more quickly than people who had played in Major League Baseball the whole time. So that was the rationale between the rule. There was nothing, it's not that we didn't want foreign players, it's not that we were trying to limit their earnings, but we did feel it was important that there be a certain equity across players. I guess prior to being elected, I guess there's only one thing I was really good at, and I was a pretty good labor lawyer. And sort of rule one in labor negotiations is individually driven exceptions with a union get you into a lot of trouble. So as appealing as Mr. Ohtani is as a player, it's more important, I think, when you're doing a collective bargaining agreement to keep your eye on what the rules should be for all players and not get distracted by the appeal of any one individual.
Anybody? Now or never.
Does that mean I'm not getting invited back? Is it something I've said, or?
You said you had to leave at 4.
You're right about
a hard
that.
schedule.
Kazan Nagasuka, Japan Times as well. Commissioner Manfred, I think one of the concerns you may have is the growing number of Tommy John surgeries in the States. How concerned are you on this issue? And is any is Major League Baseball? How is Major League Baseball tackling on this issue?
Well, we are concerned. It's numbers and age at which the surgeries are taking place. And there has been a significant change in the last pick your period, 5 years, as to what we're seeing. So what have we done in response? We put together a group of some of the leading orthopedic surgeons in the United States who are team physicians. They are conducting a variety of studies directed at determining why this is happening. For example, they have longitudinal studies going across organizations who have different training tactics to try to figure out whether there's some things that clubs are doing with respect to training that makes a difference and produces higher incidence of Tommy John surgery. We're looking at the baseball. This might be interesting. You know, there's a theory out there that there's less Tommy John surgery here in Japan because of the tackiness of the baseball. We've actually experimented with changes in our baseball because of the possibility that this theory is for real. I think last and maybe most immediate and interesting is the orthopedists came back to us, and a lot of these other studies take time to develop data that's robust enough to make a judgment. But the one thing that they came back to us in fairly short order about was that we were signing players who already had an athletic history that put them at risk because of overuse as young people. So one of the things that we've done, and this problem is particularly acute in the United States, after Little League, there's a number of different organizations that operate in that 12 to 18 age group. And so, Rob Manfred, a young pitcher in the United States, he may be playing high school baseball, he might be playing American Legion ball, he may be playing on a travel team, he might be playing Pony League. So because of the lack of integration between those fine organizations, all great organizations doing the right thing, but because of the lack of integration, nobody knows exactly how that young pitcher is being used, how many innings he's pitching. Sometimes parents are not forthcoming. Sometimes kids are not forthcoming because they want to play. So we've developed a program with USA Baseball called Pitch Smart. It's designed to educate coaches about the need to know on a comprehensive basis how much somebody is pitching, how much they should be pitching, and how to limit the use of those players in order to promote good health during those crucial years of 12 to 18.
Dan.
Mr. Commissioner, China is a participant, as is Taiwan in the tournament itself. Just going back a little time, before the Beijing Olympics, I can remember an MLB contingent coming over and saying, if you're 1 in a million in China, that means there's 4,000 of you. Right. Kind of in the hunt for the next great pitcher prospect, potentially. In the 9 years subsequent, it doesn't seem that Chinese baseball has flourished or blossomed. I don't want to characterize it too much, but let's put it in the constructive. What do you think baseball can do? It's a potential huge market if you can find either players or video audience. How is that going to happen?
Well, we remain extraordinarily interested in the market in China. With respect to the development of players, we run a number of schools in China. We do think we're starting to see fruit from those schools in terms of the quality of play. I think the team from China is a much better team than it has been historically. I think they may do better in the WBC than people think. I think the second thing that we've done is we formed a partnership with a company called Le Sport in China. We are making available a Chinese language platform that makes our postseason and regular season games available on a regular basis. There's actually shops online where you can go in and buy merchandise, Major League Baseball branded merchandise. And this we think we have finally found the right partner in China, and it has begun to give us a foothold in China that we have not been able to achieve previously. So we remain bullish on it, both in terms of the development of players and as a potential business opportunity.
Okay, the commissioner has to go in a couple of minutes, so this will be the last question.
First and last, right?
So since you're here in Japan, the United States and Japan have shared baseball for quite a long time, and the sport has been here since 1872. And I'm just curious what your opinion is about what it is about a culture or a people that appreciates baseball, and specifically, you have any thoughts about why the Japanese people love baseball so much?
You know, I think that there are certain cultures that appreciate the intricacy and pace of our game. I think in the American culture, there's a appeal to the pastoral nature of the game. I know that I will never forget the first time I went into a ballpark and saw the visual of that green field, and there's something inherently appealing about that, I think, to Americans. But I also believe it's the intricacy of the game. It is a thinking man's game. Thinking woman's game, and I think that that's something that the culture here and American culture have in common, and it attracts people in both cultures to our great game.
Okay, I'd like to thank Rob for coming here today. It was a real honor. In that envelope I handed you earlier, I wasn't supposed to give it to you yet, but this is an honorary membership to the club.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're free to come in here anytime you want and hold another press conference.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.